Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of All In with Art Stapleton, the New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I am your host, Art Stapleton. It's been quite a week here at 1925 Giants Drive in the Meadowlands, and with the Packers coming to town, got a lot to talk about with the Packers and Giants. And no, I'm not talking about years ago. I won't bring up championship games from 07 or games in 11.
This was supposed to be friendly, Art. This is supposed to be friendly.
I got my buddy Aaron Nagler, Cheesehead TV. Nobody knows the Packers better than Nags. And a lot of ball game left, Aaron. But for the Giants, there isn't a lot of ball game left in the last tenure for Brian Daboll. He's fired. You got a lot of coaches with Green Bay connections that may or may not be attached to this job. First off, buddy, how's it hanging? How you guys doing over there at Cheesehead TV?
We're doing well. You lose a couple games and holy cow, the fan base is ready to melt down, fire everybody. Everybody's a bum. You know how it is. Like at some point, you just got to take a breath and tell everybody to RELAX, as the former quarterback liked to say. And hopefully, pick things up here and look a little better at MetLife on Sunday.
So obviously, let's get into it. First off, I'd say the biggest thing is, from a Packers perspective, you're coming in on a short week. You battled the heck out of the Eagles in a game that people said, it wasn't aesthetically pleasing to watch. But, the reality is you had two good teams going at it. And unfortunately, the Packers don't win the game. I would imagine what happened the previous week is kind of what has continued the feeling. But, when we start putting coaches lists together, I never would have imagined that Mr. LaFleur's name would somehow in the last 48 to 72 hours be out there as somebody who's coaching for his job. Makes sense of this whole thing. I know it probably has a little bit to do with what you said in the open, but is LaFleur really in trouble here?
Not really, not right now. The thing, though, that is kind of percolating behind the scenes is his contract and where he stands, along with Brian Gutekunst, as far as both of those guys are entering the final year of their deals next season in 2026. And, of course, as you are undoubtedly aware, the Packers have a new CEO and president who acts as a de facto owner, right? Ed Policy, meeting with reporters this past offseason, point blank said, I don't like the idea of these guys going into the final years of their deals as lame duck coaches or a lame duck GM. He also said he's not, going to make any decisions, immediately, and he's going to let essentially kind of this season play out. Now, obviously, no decisions were being made after week 2 when the Packers were riding high and everyone was touting them as Super Bowl contenders. No decisions are going to be made after a 2-game losing streak at home where they look bad on offense. But they're going to let this play out. And, I said it pretty plainly after the game on Sunday, and some Packers fans were kind of surprised. The idea that if they continue to look like this on offense throughout the remainder of the season, there's going to be some tough conversations, and it wouldn't be surprising to see Ed Policy potentially make a change. And I know Matt was asked after the game, are you coaching for your job? And, most coaches have the pat standard answer, you're always coaching for your job. You're always under pressure. It's like, there's little doubt in my mind, though, that they're going to figure this out. They've been here before. You don't have to go very far back here. You go to 2023. At this point in the season, they were coming off a loss to Pittsburgh, sitting at 3-6. They turned that season around and ended up in the divisional round of the playoffs, And I'm not saying that's automatically going to happen, but there is a ton of football left to be played. So is there a lot of kind of noise outside the building regarding Matt LaFleur? Yeah, no doubt. But, internally, only one opinion matters, and that's Ed Policy's opinion. And that opinion is going to, be formed by the entirety of the season, not just a rough patch in the middle of it.
So it's interesting, the Packers, anytime the Packers roll here to MetLife in the Meadowlands, obviously you're like me, you're in New York, so you're bouncing back and forth between Green Bay and New York. This game, outside of other circumstances, you wish the Giants had a couple more wins. There are going to be a lot of cheeseheads heading to MetLife on Sunday.
I'll be there. I'll be there, sir. One of the rare Sundays I'm not working.
I am not surprised one bit. But this game takes on a completely different feel from a Giants perspective. Obviously, Brian Daboll fired. Mike Kafka is the interim head coach. here for the Giants. Can they get the defense going? Shane Bowen is still here. And there's a change at quarterback because they were not going to trot Russell Wilson out there again after the way he's looked the last couple times in relief to Jackson Dart. But it's a little disappointing to not see Jackson Dart out there for another start. He's in the concussion protocol. We know how that goes. I would imagine that's going to be another week. I mean, welcome back Jackson Dart next week to go to Detroit, of all places. So,
right.
We'll see. We'll see if that happens. If he gets out of protocol and if they're quick to put him back out there. But
that's the other thing. Isn't this like multiple times that he's been in the protocol already this season?
He hasn't been in the protocol. He's been checked. He's been brought to the medical. And actually, one of those was in the preseason, and some of those have kind of been, him not realizing what the protocol entails and staying down on the ground. And stays down on the ground, and then you go like this because you fumbled the ball, and all of a sudden you're touching your head, and they're buzzing down from
all the watchwords. Everything goes siren. Yeah, I get it.
Exactly. So, and then obviously, as an organization, we all saw what happened on Thursday Night Football with Dable and the medical tent, and when the league got involved. Now, every time you mention the word concussion or protocol, and they don't have to be together, the Giants are feeling, in their pocketbooks, and they say, okay, well, we're going to wait, and we're going to take it as seriously as we should, maybe even more so. So, no Dart, but Winston comes in. So you're an NFL fan just like I am outside of the teams that we follow. What does that mean for the Packers, do you think? Is there any impact whatsoever? Is this a blip on the radar that they're going to actually see Jameis on Sunday? And does that, send any shiver to this defense, which is pretty damn good?
Right. The team, I doubt it, right? The fan base, oh yeah. Like the idea that the last time the Packers went into that building, they were riding a 2-game win streak, and they were feeling really good about themselves after beating Detroit and Kansas City, thinking we're going to go to New York. I believe that was a nationally televised game. We're going to go and we're going to have a party, right? And then Tommy DeVito shows up and runs all over them. So, yeah, with the fan base, we've got a long history watching this team go against backups and absolutely fall apart. Like going all the way back, there's a famous Thanksgiving game in the annals of Packers history where third-string Jason Garrett for the Cowboys on national television on Thanksgiving goes, and every Packers fan thought we're finally going to beat the Cowboys. And then Garrett throws for like 1 billion yards and touchdowns, etc. So outside the building, I think everybody's concerned because yes, it is a change-up. You've got not the same guys calling the plays, but you've got a new head coach, a new quarterback. I will say, though, you mentioned the Packers defense has been playing lights out the last few weeks, this last game in particular. I mean, we all know Jameis is going to throw you a few. Like, that is going to happen. The big question is, can you hang on to it? It's kind of like Brett back in the day. It was always like, Favre's going to throw you a couple. You just got to hang on to them. I do think the way Hafley's crew is operating, especially up front, clearly they're going to try and get the run game going. That's kind of the key that the Panthers had, though the Packers did a really nice job against Saquon Barkley this past week. So, yeah, I don't think, like I said, internally, I don't think it moves the needle much. It's a guy who's played a ton of football in Jameis Winston. There's a ton of tape on him. They know what he's all about. I don't think not that it doesn't matter, because of course it matters, but I don't think it changes much in their approach as far as how they prepare for the game.
It's interesting because between Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary, who obviously New Jerseyans know very well, and the Giants certainly know Micah well, if Russell Wilson were the quarterback, I mean, those guys might be going for a record this weekend.
Yes,
that's how crazy it is. But I gotta address the elephant in the room. I buried the lead.
Boy,
and I
here we
told
go.
you that your defensive coordinator, my Bergen County native, Jeff Hafley, runs the defense here, is doing a damn good job here with Green Bay. I'm writing a story today about Jeff Hafley, and is this as much an audition for Mike Kafka as the Giants interim coach as it is for Jeff Hafley as the defensive coordinator coming here to MetLife and knowing the Giants with their Boston College connections? They love their New Jersey guys.
They do.
Tell me a little bit about Hafley and the job he's done in Green Bay, and do you see him as a head coaching candidate in waiting, whether or not it's here, maybe in Green Bay with the stuff that you've talked about with LaFleur, or anywhere else?
I think he's absolutely head coach material. It's so funny to me, though. I just kind of went back and forth about this on Twitter this morning. Like, after 3 weeks, there were stories out. Like I think Fowler put something out there on ESPN, like, potential head coaching candidates. There was a definite drumbeat for Jeff Hafley, right? And then legit the next week, they gave up 40 in Dallas, and all that talk stopped for a few weeks, right? Now, coming off a nationally televised game where they absolutely shut the Eagles down, now that talk is back. And look, like I said, I think he is head coach material, and I think his time at Boston College really helps him. His ability to communicate publicly is, outstanding. You couple that with his work that you've seen on the field. This is his now year and a half in Green Bay. He took over a defense that was middling, hovering around top 10. They've been excellent under his stewardship. And last year in particular, he was really kind of piecing things together, didn't have much of a pass rush with the front four. Now you add Micah Parsons. I think it's been lights out. And even now, they don't have the greatest secondary in the world. Not a ton of names that people would know. They have played probably above their regular capabilities. I think
corners more safety.
The corners, safety, absolutely, right? The corners. Yep. And I think he has really kind of helped elevate everybody on that side of the ball in a way we hadn't seen the last couple iterations of defensive coordinators in Green Bay. So, yeah, I think it's probably an eventuality at this point. The running joke with Packers fans is we have to start making up stuff about him, to make him feel or seem a little less desirable. So, if you hear any rumors, some negative rumors about him, you'll know where they're coming from.
Hey, I'm born and raised in Bergen County. I live in New York now, but hey, man, if there's any scuttlebutt to be dug up of Jeff Hafley,
it's any dirt.
I think I could find it. I could find it here. Not that I'll be looking for it, but
no, but you'll know about it, I'm sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So Hafley, it's interesting because, like I said, if the defense continues to outperform the offense in Green Bay and what you said about LaFleur, can you envision a scenario? Obviously, you think they're going to turn it around and LaFleur is going to be the guy, but is there that much love for Hafley in Green Bay where you think you could get to a point where it's like, you know what, we don't want to lose this guy? Look, It happened with the Giants.
Yep,
they thought Ben McAdoo was going to Philly, and it was almost like, okay, do we keep Tom Coughlin or do we make the big move for McAdoo because we don't want to see him go become the next great coach in Philly? Obviously, we know how everything panned out.
I was just going to say, but maybe that's a cautionary tale.
Right.
I do think, look, that would be pretty dramatic. It doesn't feel like something that would be kind of in line with how the Packers operate. But I probably should say have operated in the last kind of 30 years. They've been a modern, kind of an example of stability. But I will say, Ed Policy is a real wild card because no one really knows how he wants to operate, how he wants to put his kind of stamp on his time as president. I suspect, he's been with the Packers organization now like 15, 16 years, something like that. He's pretty much, gotten a handle on how things have operated in Green Bay, and he's ingratiated himself into not just the franchise, but the community. I'd be surprised if he did something too dramatic, but again, if you fall apart down the stretch here, possibly. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I do think it's a pretty kind of far-fetched idea. Again, so much is going to depend on these final 8 games, but yeah, I can't say it would be absolutely impossible.
Gotcha. Well, I do have you on here, and it's funny because a couple years ago when Dable got hired, another name that was thrown out there for the Giants was Mike McCarthy, and I know you have an expansive history with Mike McCarthy in Green Bay. Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about McCarthy a little bit too, just the idea of, now it's another iteration for McCarthy out of Dallas and everything that transpired there. But from somebody who's covered McCarthy, who's known McCarthy, when that name is put out there by some people for a possible Giants vacancy, what are your thoughts? Someone who lives in this city, is Mike McCarthy the kind of guy, or kind of coach who could withstand this? I know the Jerry Jones aspect is just in a different world.
Right. It's a different experience, right?
What's your feeling on McCarthy? Does he have anything? You think he has anything left? Another run in him coming out of Dallas?
I do, actually. Absolutely. Look, it's interesting you mentioned the Jerry Jones component because what I do think he would kind of thrive in New York is being back to being kind of the face of the organization, which is what he had to do in Green Bay for so long because Ted Thompson didn't do anything. Like
Right.
we would hear from Ted basically the mandated CBA mandated 4 or 5 times during training camp, and we wouldn't hear from him again until he had to appear at the combine, and that was it, right? Mike had to answer all the questions about everything, and he had to be the face of the organization. Now, they also had Aaron Rodgers upcoming, and that became a whole different thing. But in Dallas, that was all Jerry. Yeah. Like, he didn't do any of that. And it was kind of weird to see him kind of have to supplicate himself like that. I do think, just from the idea of being the public figurehead of the organization, I think he'd be great in that regard. The one question you have, though, is, offensively, as he's clearly the offensive guy and would bring his playbook, whatever he wants to do offensively, to the table. And it's hard to look at the way the Cowboys have really come alive offensively since he's left and think, okay, do we really want to bring in a guy who, I know he took a year off and talked a lot about, studying modern offenses, because one of the things we talked about a lot here in Green Bay his last year in 2018 was how staid and static and unlike modern offenses his approach had become. Then you go to Dallas and you have this opportunity after a year away to modernize your offense a little bit, and it looked very similar to the stuff he'd been running in Green Bay. So that would be my one kind of note of caution. Like, is he really going to maybe possibly step up his kind of version of whatever he wants to run NFL offense wise? Because if he's still running, the spread stuff that he was running with Rodgers in, say, 2013, I think, that time has long gone. And that would be a warning bell for me.
I wanted to ask you one other thing. It just struck me about, to go back to Hafley for a second. Mm-hmm. We talked about the personnel, and obviously the Packers have very good personnel up front, especially. So it takes on that, that personality of the defense, especially with Micah now. And, Xavier McKinney being in the secondary, obviously the Giants know him well. I'm sure he's going to have 2 picks on Sunday. Joe Shane, I'm sure General Manager Joe Shane's very much looking forward to seeing McKinney out there making plays sideline to sideline.
Exactly.
But how much, schematically from what Hafley does defensively, how much what we're seeing on Sunday from Green Bay is an evolution of what Hafley brought last year to this year, what Green Bay's always been? Give me a feel, give me a sense of what we're going to see from the Green Bay defense, and how much of that is Hafley's stamp on it, or is it the personnel kind of really driving where it's at? Sometimes that's not a bad thing. Sometimes
it's not, right? Well, you got to run the horses you got, right? And obviously the Parsons trade changed a lot. As far as last year, there was a lot of kind of having to draw up pressure, like whether that was not so much exotics or overloads, but like lots of simulated pressure where you're presenting a front and thinking, okay, we're going to send this guy. Okay, that guy drops, and we can send it from someplace else, and really trying to disguise what you're doing on the back end. And the disguise part is still there, but man, they're doing a lot more just rushing forward because they're able to get home with it. Because Micah is such an issue that people have to commit resources to making sure he doesn't wreck you. That gives other guys one-on-one opportunities, and that doesn't mean he's not calling pressures at times, because he does. And it's interesting. You talk about McKinney. They've started, because for the first, I want to say 6-7 games, they were playing a lot of like deep shell coverage. Now they're predominantly a cover 3 team, but they do 2 high stuff. They do, a mixing and matching. But in the last couple games, really in the Panthers games where it started, they've started kind of playing with McKinney down in the box a lot more. That doesn't mean he's automatically coming or playing the run. Sometimes he bails into coverage, etc. But they're starting to seemingly play with that a little bit more. And I love the idea of getting McKinney closer to the line of scrimmage and his ability as a playmaker. I mean, he had a sack and a forced fumble against the Panthers that just happened to bounce back into the Panthers' hands. But his playmaking ability, it's so funny because, his first kind of 4 or 5 games in Green Bay, he had an interception in every single game.
Right.
And then those start to dry up, as interceptions do. And fans are talking, well, what's happened? Like, is he falling off, or teams just kind of avoiding him? And it's mostly the latter. And that kind of extended to the first part of this season. Like, teams didn't want to throw anywhere near him for good reason. So it feels like Hafley and probably McKinney sat down and said, can we get me involved somehow? Because he is one of their major kind of talents on the defensive side of the ball, but he had kind of just been sitting in no man's land, not really having much to do. So I think that's the big kind of, not a huge switch, but it's been noticeable how he's been down near the line of scrimmage a bit more in recent weeks.
Which is funny because that's what Wink Martindale had him doing here early, and he and Wink clashed big time.
Right.
And Xavier actually wanted to be the roamer. He wanted to be the free,
yeah.
He wanted to be what he was in Alabama and going out and making plays, and that's obviously what he was at the beginning of Green Bay. But like you said, do you want to just stand there and do nothing?
Do nothing. Well, and what's interesting is you see this a lot during training camp. What he has the ability to do in a lot of their calls, not all of them, but there's a lot of kind of calls pre-snap where if there's motion or they see something, like he has the freedom to become either the guy down, dropping down, or staying back. Like that's a lot in some of their calls. That's his call. So it's interesting to watch, and it's kind of fun to watch him and Evan Williams, kind of communicate about who's doing what from down to down. And it's played with quarterbacks a little bit. You think he's coming, but now he's dropping, and you thought that guy was going to be, down near the line of scrimmage. Now suddenly he's bailing into a, middle of the field cover third responsibility. So they've done a lot of kind of playing with disguise between those two guys.
Here with the Giants, the defense was supposed to be, top 10, top 5. They just haven't lived up to that. Obviously, Brian Burns, it's a good opportunity for him on Sunday, I would imagine, being on the same field as Mike.
It's a good opportunity for everybody up front with the Giants.
That's what I was going to say to you. Let's talk Packers offense versus Giants defense. Is Jordan Love getting too much heat in terms of where they're at? I mean, what are the Packers showing offensively?
Yeah, it's been really rough these last couple of weeks. And, Love is coming off a game where I think probably really for the first time all season, you saw him starting to drop his eyes because he's not trusting the rush for good reason. The Eagles were all over him. I think it was the second most pressure he'd seen all year. There were some looks, some opportunities he missed because he was looking to run quickly, not trusting the protection in front of him. But what's interesting is once they got some more 2-minute stuff, some more up-tempo stuff, he did kind of get back there, put his foot in the ground, top of the drop, let it rip, and then they started moving the ball, right? I don't doubt for a moment they'll have a bit of a different plan now, especially because they've lost Elton Jenkins for the year. Their center, they're going to have Sean Ryan move in there. But, man, they cannot run the ball. And I think a lot of Packers fans, somewhat jokingly, but probably somewhat realistically, you look at rankings and it's like, oh, well, they're not ranked very well against the run. Man, that means Matt LaFleur is just going to try and pound the football, even though the Eagles aren't very, well rated against the run, and they couldn't run against them. So I do think, obviously the whole kind of conversation around the Packers offense at the moment is how conservative it is. I mean, you saw Josh Jacobs just being bludgeoned into a wall for the first half of that game on Monday night. I think Jordan Love had 5 pass attempts by the 2-minute warning in the first half. So I suspect you'll see maybe a little bit of a recalibration there, but I don't think too much. And ultimately, if they don't change their approach, the Giants are going to have plenty of opportunities on third downs, 3rd and 7+ to kind of pin their ears back and get after the quarterback because let's face it, that's what the Giants front is really good at, and it's where the Packers really struggle.
It's interesting because when you look at the Giants front, and a player that has had a relatively good rookie season, but as you know, Abdul Carter, we had him compared to LT in the beginning of the year. I mean, that was certainly not
lofty expectations.
It wasn't reality. I mean, when you talk expectations for rookies and Giants pass rushers, I mean, Abdul Carter's essentially done what the other pass rushers in their rookie seasons have done for the Giants, going all the way back to Carl Banks and 1984 when, you and I were fledgling NFL fans. Right. But in terms of, I think that's the player that the Packers have to watch out for this weekend. I would imagine they're going to put more attention to Brian Burns, and I don't know, Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't practiced the last 2 days, so it'll be interesting to see if he's out there and in what capacity. Abdul Carter on the same field as Micah Parsons is going to be a story that gets totally underplayed here. And if it didn't happen with Dable getting fired and everything else, and the Giants have won a couple games.
Yeah, there'd probably be more conversation about
that.
That
would be a huge story, right? Abdul Carter, the guy he's compared against, for Micah Parsons. So I'm interested to see if the Giants can actually unleash Micah Parsons. So that leads me to what I want to end our interview and the show with, is that Aaron Nagler, are you jealous that the Giants have a quarterback who believes he's Anakin Skywalker and a defensive pass rusher who believes he is Darth Vader.
Let's see. Yeah, kind of. I'd love to get a little, Star Wars back and forth with any of the guys. The closest thing we got in Green Bay is Hackett, is still on staff as a consultant for LaFleur. And I have talked a lot of Star Wars with him at the Combine. So I know he's a monster Star Wars fan. But yeah, as far as the players go, I haven't heard too many of those guys name checking any Star Wars characters. But who knows? Maybe that's something I need to dive into. But
I mean,
on the surface, yeah, that's pretty awesome.
If you had your quarterback in Green Bay come out with eye black like Anakin's scar, I mean, that would be the end of Aaron Nagler and Cheesehead TV.
I would be pretty excited. That would be pretty dope. No doubt about it. Unfortunately, the closest we've had is Aaron Rodgers going to the podium with a Rise of Skywalker sweatshirt, and I had to DM him and say, "Come on, man, you can't be rocking that. That is anything else Star Wars, not that movie."
I did. You know what? I did forget about that. Aaron is a little bit of a Star Wars.
Oh, he loves Star Wars. Yeah. He's a Star Wars fan, definitely.
And that I think it was back when he was dating Olivia Munn, right? They both went as Star Wars characters. He had the hood on and everything. So
whole shtick. Yep. Yeah. No doubt. Well, so that's the closest we've got.
We're all about stick. Unfortunately, Anakin won't be at quarterback for the Giants this weekend, but Abdul maybe, and you'll love if you're in the stands. If Abdul does anything, they got the up in the scoreboard, the Darth Vader type meme.
So hopefully I don't see that because that means he's not doing anything. That'll be great.
That is true. Well, he could get a play. I mean, he had 2 sacks against the Bears, and they were both wiped off in penalties. So
there you go.
That's just the way the season's gone for the Giants. Well, listen, Aaron Nagler, tell everybody where they can find you, because I'm sure there are some Packer fans who are watching our show today and want to check out things that you do over at Cheesehead TV.
Yeah, cheeseheadtv.com is kind of home base. You can follow us on all the socials. Just use Cheesehead TV. Obviously, our YouTube channel, we've got new content there each and every day, 365. We are devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide.
Awesome. Well, Aaron Nagler is all in with Green Bay. We are all in with the New York Giants. For Paul Wood, Aaron Nagler, I'm Mark Stapleton. Thanks for watching the show. We'll see you on Sunday, and then we'll catch you post-game from MetLife. Have a good weekend, everybody.